Welcome back to EDH on a Budget. I'm your host, Iceman. Today we're going to be going over my strongest budget deck, Vadrik Astral Archmage. My current deck list is about $75, but it can be easily tailored to a budget of $25, $50, or $100. The reason this deck is so cheap is because Vadrik Astral Archmage has the ability to reduce instant and sorcery spells I cast by X, where X is Vadrik's power. That with his day-night mechanic, where whenever day goes to night or night goes to day, it puts a +1/+1 counter on him. So he self pumps himself his power, reducing the instant sorcery spells without even doing anything. And in red and blue, it's very easy to pump his power anyway. So my deck list has a couple of equipment to help that. Also, Vadrik only costs about 20 cents. He's one blue and a red for the mana cost. As far as the equipment, we have Hand of Vecna, which is a 3 cost legendary artifact equipment. You can equip it for 2, or you can pay 1 life for each card in your hand. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, equipped creature gets +X/+X, where X is the number of cards in your hand. Having that ability to pay life to equip it is very convenient. There's also cards like Frantic Search, which is an instant, 2 and a blue. This is 20 cents. Draws 2 cards, then discards 2 cards, and untaps 3 lands. So more than likely this spell will just cost blue to do all that and essentially become a ritual where you have extra lands that created mana being untapped. As far as lands, you're going to want everything that can tap for a color. I would not put one single land that taps for only a colorless. I don't care what the utility is. There are easier ways to deal with graveyards. You do not want to mess with the pips of mana, because when Vadrik is easily going to reduce your instant and sorceries, that means most of those spells are going to be just the colored mana. So this deck is going to have a ton of 1 pip plus some generic spells. Maybe 2 pips tops. I would definitely try to avoid 3 unless it's something you really, really want. X spells is going to be ideal because of the flexibility, where if Vadrik's power is 10, then you can just have X be equal to 10. And there's a lot of ways to draw cards like that in blue. Draw X, that's one way you could go about it. I went with a lot of flashback cards and buyback. The main win con of this particular deck is combo, but you could also do storm and burn quite easily. The card you're always going to want to tutor is Reiterate. It is $3, costs 1 red. This instant has buyback for 3. So if Vadrik's power is 4, then all you gotta pay is just 2 red. And you can copy target instant or sorcery spell, and then you may choose new targets for the copy. So this is very easy to go infinite with a lot of the cards in the deck. All the card has to do is somehow generate 2 red mana or 2 treasures, and this spell will Reiterate, will keep going back to your hand, and you can have an infinite storm count if it creates more than that, or if it does other stuff like create 2 treasures and draw 2 cards, then you're going to see your whole deck easy. You also got cards like Leyline of Anticipation, which I love for this deck. It's an enchantment for 2 blue. This enchantment, if it's in your opening hand, it just goes right onto the battlefield, and you can cast spells as though they had flash. So that day-night mechanic, flash is important for that, but it also is important for keeping Vadrik safe, only bringing him out until you absolutely are ready to pop off. And there's a lot of spells like Spell Burst. Normally not a very good counter It's only 15 cents. It's blue and X with buyback of 3. It says counter target spell with mana cost X. So Vadrik, if his power is 3, then the buyback is almost free. You just gotta pay the X for the spell. But more than likely, his power is gonna be really huge because of cards like Lunar Frenzy, Fist of Flames. There's so many ways to pump his power in red and blue. But what you really want to do is you want to aim for the instants. So you can do a lot of stuff during your opponent's turns. My deck has 24 sorceries and 31 instants. That is quite different having a deck with 55 non-permanents, non-land permanents. It just spells. Because there aren't any. There's only 2 creatures in the deck, and they're both essentially ways to get mana on turn as early as turn 1. Simian Spirit Guide, which is technically a creature. It's $1.25. But you really just exile it from your hand to create a red mana. And the reason this is important is because when you're playing this deck, you're kind of spinning your wheels sometimes. I've definitely had some games where it's like, am I gonna win? I don't know. Like, you just start your turn and you have like a draw X spell, a couple of draw 2s, and you have like 6 mana and Vadrik's power's 4, and it's like, I could cast all these spells for just the pip. Yeah, it's possible I get a tutor or my win con and I just win. And you might not. Fortunately, that hasn't really happened too often because this deck does have a good bit of tutors. There's actually a lot of great tutors in these colors for the instance that I'm looking for. Firemind's Foresight is one of them. It's only 20 cents. 5 mana, blue, and a red. This instant lets you search your library for an instant card with converted mana cost 3, reveal it, put it in your hand, and repeat the process for a mana cost of 2 and then 1. So the win con of this deck, reiterate, that's 3 mana, and it's an instant. There's a lot of ways to go infinite with this, with mana or whatever, and you can definitely win by getting a mana cost 2 and a mana cost 1 of instants also to your hand. It being an instant is huge because I can cast this on my opponent's end step and then untap with all my lands and my win cons in the hand. I played this at an LGS and I only had Vadrik and maybe an Arcane Signet and 4 or 5 lands. And he basically, he laughed. He said, wow, that's a terrible tutor. A 7 mana tutor, real powerful. And then I won that turn. Casting this on his turn and then winning on my turn. It was just pretty satisfying. But it goes to show that Vadrik doesn't look intimidating because your board presence is so small. It's literally just your commander, if you're lucky, a Leyline of Anticipation, and a couple of mana rocks. That's about it. Your threats are your hand and what you can draw. And your graveyard, because I do have a lot of flashback in this deck. And ways to cast spells from graveyards. It's fun to play. It's definitely something you gotta kind of goldfish and just try out, because you gotta learn your deck and you learn your lines and how stuff works. I would recommend, if you're not familiar with the stack, trying to get a more firm knowledge of that, because this kind of deck will use a lot of stack interaction. Another great card, which is only 25 cents, is Finale of Revelation for blue X. It's a sorcery, but it does a lot. You draw X cards. If X is 10 or more, instead shuffle your graveyard into your library, draw X, untap 5 lands, and you have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. This is not an extra turn spell, but it basically is an extra turn. When you accept your extra turn, is going to have a lot of cards in hand. And tapping 5 lands, where you only pay for basically the pips of spells, is going to be a quite an impactful turn. You do need to have some board wipes, and the two I really like for this deck are Consuming Tide, which is 50 cents, a sorcery for 2 blue. Each player chooses a non-land permanent they control and return all non-land permanents not chosen this way to their owner's hand. Then you draw a card for each opponent who has more cards in the hand than you. So I've always drawn at least one card, sometimes 2 or 3 cards with this. And in this deck, you really only need Vadrik on the battlefield. So you're choosing him. You're just trying to stay alive until you can get that combo. And then the other one, Wash Out, that's a pretty interesting one for 3 and a blue. This sorcery, return all permanents of the color of your choice to their owner's hand. So that's a way to deal with enchantments that blue and red may not be able to deal with very easily, but I'm often casting that for just blue, which when you narrow it down to just a pip, a lot of these spells become a lot better. The best spell in the deck might be Past in Flames. It's a sorcery for 63 cents, and the mana cost is 3 and a red. Each instant and sorcery in your graveyard gains flashback until end of turn. Flashback cost is equal to its mana cost, and this spell has flashback for 4 and a red. Yeah, that's a lot of value. Again, you're just going to pay red for this most of the time. So this is what I mean when it's like, am I going to win? Maybe. If this is my hand and I draw a bunch of cards, and then they go to the graveyard, and then I play this and I draw a bunch more cards, you're really digging deep. Plenty of tutors are affordable. Even Solve the Equation came down to $3. Tutor an instant or sorcery to your hand for 2 and a blue. There's also, besides Invert and Invent, that's another one of my favorites. It's a 6 mana instant tutor again for an instant and or sorcery card. So you get 2 cards that you're tutoring out. And you could go to Voltron and just try to beat face with this, but it's really going to struggle that way. I really recommend Storm, Burn, or Combo. And this is very fast deck. It can be very explosive. One definitely on turn like 4 with this, if just untapping with Vadrik. Another tutor that people may not realize is Quiet Speculation for 1 and a blue. This is 25 cents and lets you search target player's library for 3 cards with flashback and put them into that player's graveyard. So I have pump spells that have flashback. I have ways to discard my hand and draw a new hand with flashback. I just read the Past in Flames that lets me cast gives flashback to all my instants and sorceries. There's Deep Analysis, is a card draw with flashback. There's a lot of flashback to choose from, so you're always going to have 3 that you can pick to put in your graveyard, and if one of them's Past in Flames, that is really, really good value. It's almost like you're getting a second or third hand. And that's it. That's my deck. If you could like, share, and subscribe, that would help the channel grow, and please hit me up with those comments.